Hello and welcome to the match preview via the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove and as usual joined by John Gibson. As Newcastle United prepare to head to London to face Crystal Palace on Saturday, we're going to look ahead to that game. And remember, this episode is powered by NORD VPN. Hit up the link in the podcast description box to secure your plan at a very special price. John, welcome back to the podcast. Hope you're doing well. Fair to say, our optimism ahead of the West Ham game turned out to be misplaced. Have you quite recovered from Monday night?
I don't think I have. I don't think I've either recovered or understood it. It is absolutely baffling and uh, depressing, really. Depressing, really, because we were very, very poor when I think the game was set up for us to be very, very good if we wanted to be.
I think I don't think, I know I texted a friend afterwards and just said, I'm just tired. I'm just tired of Newcastle United at the moment, up and down, thinking they've turned a corner. You go into a game where you expect them to win, and we were totally within our rights to expect that. And then they put in a performance like that. And it's just the inconsistency is killing me as a fan, just ever so slightly. I don't know about you, John. Are you just craving a little bit of consistency, but on the good side of consistency?
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, it is an absolute nonsense. And, I've got to be harsh and say we are what we are. If we look at our figures, we've played 12, won 5, drawn 3, and lost 4. That's mid table figures, and we are mid table, we're 10th. And that's his, I mean, those figures don't lie. Your famous stats situation. That is our stats, and that is where we are. We're 10th. And, the worry is that it makes last season 7th, which we saw as a disappointment. Is it the reality, really? Um, you know, when we finished fourth and got to Wembley and that flattered to deceive, it came so quickly. It was wonderful. It set the bar high, and we haven't been able to stick there. And I look at our side, and if I take away my passion, my love for the club, my desire, my wish, all the things that you have as well, if I take them all out of the equation and try to put my hard head on and look at us, we look aside that if we have teams come at us and we can counter attack and press high and show vibrancy, we're fine. But the minute we're throwing the ball and say, right, we're going to put two banks of four against you, it's up to you to break us down, we run out of ideas. I don't know that we've got ideas in the first place, Andrew. We I look at this side. It may be just me. It may be in my moment of depression. It may be having felt let down at regular intervals. But I look and I think we're the same as the sameness. We've got good players, but instead of them complementing each other and fitting in and dovetailing, they bring the same quality to the table and the same lack of quality in certain things. I mean, I look at the team. Look, for example, Bruno is supposed to have £100 million escape clause in his contract. Tonali cost us 52 million. Now they should be dominating, in theory, the midfield in the Premier League. They're not. They bring exactly the same to the table, and Eddie's shown a reluctance to start them together. Yet they've cost us the thick end of £100 million, but we don't want to start them together because both want to play the same way. Both are best going forward. Both can be a little bit iffy when they're told to defend, etc., etc. We spend big money on Harvey Bonds to come after Anthony Gordon. Why? They both bring the same thing to the table. They're both outside lefts. They want to get the ball cut inside and try to finish. We have the same of the sameness. We don't have, light and shade. We don't have. We're not balanced. We just seem to sign good players and then worry about how they'll fit into the team. It doesn't work that way. We've got two outside lefts who are both England internationals and no outside right. We've got two midfielders who are both internationals, Tonali and Bruno, and we can't get them in the same side together. We haven't got balance.
Well, fingers crossed Paul Mitchell can get to work and start sorting that issue out in January. We'll talk about Tonali, John, in a moment, because it is something that everyone is talking about, whether he comes into the side or not. But I think it's important, isn't it, not to overreact to Monday night's performance and result, not to get the torches out and demand that Eddie Howe rips up his team sheet, because he's not going to do that. But I think the key question is, how does he get his side to bounce back from what was a very poor second half? Do you look at the first 45 minutes of that game against West Ham and think there are definitely positives to work from? Or are you kind of like some are past the stage of saying that? You know, we've said it before, Everton, Brighton. Now, I was the one saying it. I was the one right at the front of the queue saying it. Have we got past that stage now where that's the defence and we say on another day? Is it? Do we now need to see more from Newcastle United?
I think without a shadow of doubt, Andrew, I'm certainly past the stage of saying, let's take that first 45 minutes against West Ham and let's take the positives out of it. The harsh fact is the score was Newcastle 0, West Ham 1. So was it such a great first half? I mean, it was better than the second half, but that doesn't make it a great first half. And this, by the way, was a side that had lost 5 out of 11 that came up here and were ripe for the taking, and we didn't take it. Even their fans were expecting them to get cuffed up here. I mean, our record, this isn't, in some ways, Andrew, this isn't a one-off, because our record this season's 5-3-4. Now, that's not the record of a one off, is it? We've lost 4 games and we've won 5. It's not a one off. It's back again to what we were. Yes, we were wonderful in the previous game, second half against Nottingham Forest, and then we went like this. But this is what mid table sides do. We want to be better in mid table. We see ourselves as better in mid table. In lots of ways, we are better in mid table, but we're 10th for a reason. We're not 10th on opinion. We're 10th because that is the results we've got this season. And that has got to be improved. And there's a lot of questions which Eddie has got to answer for himself as well as for us. And it's no good shying away and sort of saying, oh, well, we are a good side and we were good. Let's take all the positives out of the first half. Excuse me, what was the score at half time? Let us say that this will happen, that'll happen, that'll happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't. We take and burn out the back, and what's it look like? It looks like a door swinging open on its hinges, doesn't it? I mean, Kelly had a nightmare in his position, and I wasn't expecting it to be a nightmare as a one-off. But he did, the poor lad. He had a mare, and we were struggling without Burn at the back because of the honest to goodness approach he brings and his physicality and his willingness to defend. I mean, there's a lot of questions. We haven't got, Andrew, you love Hibby. You've talked about it before, Terry Hibbett. I think Beardsley is one of the best players we've seen. We all know what Gascoigne's got. Tell me a midfield player that's got their eye. If the current Newcastle midfield player, with all the big names we've got in there, Joe Linton and Bruno and Tonali and Willock and Longstaff, tell me somebody that's got an eye and can create a pass like Hibby did, like Beardsley did, like Gaza did. But now I know I'm talking top of the range, but we're aiming to be top of the range, aren't we? Why are we buying players that all do the same thing? They all look much of a muchness to me. We haven't got a Hibby. We haven't got a Beardsley.
I think we've got players who have the potential to be very, very good Premier League players, and we've seen that in each of the players you've mentioned. It just seems to be this season, especially, the consistency is lacking. You go out against Arsenal and you put in a fantastic performance, but then you go up against a West Ham team who are looking destined for a relegation scrap. The manager's on the ropes, and you put in a performance like that. It's very confusing, and it's very disappointing.
It is, Andrew. You're right. You're right. It is. But at the same time, it's very predictable. The reason we played well against Arsenal is because they come onto us and we counter them, and we counter them with great pace that we've got on the side, and we like them to come onto them and we'll counter them. But when you play against West Ham, they're not going to pass you to death. They're not going to be Arsenal. They're not going to be the old Man City, etc., etc. They're going to say, "There's the ball. You do it." And when clubs do that against us, we aren't good. We can't play with the ball and no space ahead of us and no green grass and be clever. If teams want to come onto us, I mean, you can look at the next two games and it's ridiculous. Crystal Palace are second bottom of the league with one win out of 12. If they sit in, we'll have a problem breaking them down. Liverpool are top of the league, 8 points clear, have only lost one. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute we'll beat them, but they'll come on to us and we'll go on the counter and we'll look gritty and determined and give them a game. And that's totally the wrong way around, isn't it? We give the big teams a game because they come on to us and our side suited to the counter. We don't give poor or average sides a game because they sit in and we haven't got the guile, the vision, the killer pass to open things up like the players that I've just talked about. Neither have we, by the way, the forwards that'll score goals outside of Isaac. When Isaac doesn't have a day and he'd scored 4 out of 4 before West Ham, when it isn't his night, who else is going to score? When we do get in, we don't finish. And I've said to you many times, people say, well, let's take the positives out of this. We've had 12 shots. I said, well, maybe it's 3 were on target. And by the way, we scored none of them. And missing chances is bad play. I've said that before. It's no good saying, well, we were just unlucky. We missed all our chances. Sorry, you're not supposed to miss a lot of chances. We do not score goals. And then when we defend the way we defended against West Ham, and I know we've defended better than that in the past, then you end up getting a result like that. I mean, honest to God, Andrew, I don't know what we're going to see at Crystal Palace. And you know what? Does Eddie Howe know what he's going to get at Crystal Palace? Because I bet he didn't expect what he got against West Ham.
Well, some people who watch West Ham say that's exactly what we expected from West Ham, and Newcastle just didn't have an answer. It's interesting about Saturday because we'll be bringing you the view from the opposition later in this week, and I haven't watched a lot of Crystal Palace, so excuse me for my naivety when it comes to Palace, but having had a quick look at the possession stats, Palace at home don't seem to have a lot of possession. Out of 6 games at Selhurst Park this season, they've not had more than 36% possession in 4 of those games. Their only win this season, which was against Spurs at Selhurst Park, they won that game 1-0 with 34% possession. So looking at the stats there, Newcastle United are going to face exactly the same challenge that they did against West Ham on Saturday against Crystal Palace. So the question is, what does Eddie Howe do? Because you can criticize Eddie for a few things. In-game management, for example, the subs were a little bit strange, and it's not the first time we've said that. And maybe a few of the criticisms at his door. But is the bottom line, John, that he just doesn't have the players to become a possession-based side? And that's a major issue.
Right. I think that's right, because we haven't got, and I don't want to bang on too much on one subject, Andrew, but we haven't got the playmaker. Who's the supreme playmaker? What we've got runners, we've got tacklers, I'm thinking midfield, but tell me somebody that's got the eye and can thread a pass that'll just open up the whole game and change the pattern. We haven't got that. By the way, if we haven't got a side that can be possession based, whose fault's that? I mean, how is the recruitment brought across players that have cost an awful lot of money? Tonali's another Bruno. Bruno's another Tonali. And by the way, they're both fabulous players. I am not saying that. I'm saying they're both the same type of player. Bonds. Why did we sign Bonds when we had Gordon? I mean, why didn't we get
John? Might people say we sit here and we say they don't have the players to become possession based. And Eddie Howe effectively said that a couple of weeks back. But we talk up Bruno's passing ability. We know Tonali can hit a pass. So is it a case that it's other players around them that aren't capable of changing the direction of Newcastle United, and that's where Eddie Howe's maybe been let down? I mean, it's easy to say that because it's going to take 4 or 5 windows to build a team that is comfortable with the ball. But I would argue in the last 2 or 3 windows, certainly, he's not been handed the players to do that. So even January,
But
we're kind of starting from a...
But in fairness, Andrew, we both know, and I'm sure you would agree, and it's quite rightly so, Eddie's got a big input into who comes and doesn't come. He doesn't just accept. It's not like Chelsea where they say, here's a barrel load of 20 players, now see how you can fit them into a team. He says, I want Dehy, and I don't want anybody else, and I don't want this to happen, and I want that to happen. And quite rightly, I'm not having a go at that. But you cannot say he hasn't been handed the players that he needs, because he has a huge say in picking those players, doesn't he? And I'm not having a go just at Eddie. Eddie's done us terrific, and Eddie's got some great players. I'm just baffled why we've got 2 outside lefts and no outside right, and why we spend a huge chunk of money on 2 wonderful players like Bruno and Tonali, yet on the manager's own admission, by his team selection sheet at the start of every game, he's very reluctant to put them in the same side together.
You mentioned there
From the start.
you mentioned there the outside right, and obviously everybody wants to see a winger come in. Brian Mbeumo seems to be the top pick for many. We know Newcastle United have watched him and do hold an interest in him. Fantastic player. But someone mentioned something the other day on the Monday show to me and said, why are we looking at a winger whose best part of his game is on the counter? That doesn't seem a long-term buy. If Eddie Howe and Newcastle United want to transition to this possession-based side, then is Brian Mbeumo only the answer for the next 2 or 3 years until Newcastle United get to that possession-based side? Like, again, it's not an easy task. It's a very hard challenge to go from a counter-attacking side to a possession-based side. But the reality is, for where Newcastle United want to go, that it needs to happen, because we've seen they can't do it at the moment. But it's just it just seems to be a real dilemma, doesn't it, on and off the pitch?
It does. It does. And as you said, or as you adhere to, if you want to be a top 4 side, and that is supposed to be our ambition, and that was touted from the boardroom with the Amanda very early on, that was our ambition. If you want to be a Champions League side, you've almost got to be possession based, haven't you? You can't be a counter-attacking side to be a top 4 side, because you've got to dominate games. And I mean, we are a good counter-attacking side. The problem is that a lot of times you can't be counter-attacking, and Crystal Palace is going to be one of those games. West Ham was one of those games. You can only be counter-attacking, especially at home, if you're playing Liverpool or the old Manchester City or Arsenal, and then you can be a counter-attacking side. But if you're gonna beat these sides at the bottom, I mean, we didn't beat Bournemouth, we didn't beat Everton, we lost against Fulham. If you're going to beat those sides, you've got to be possession based. And I'm just, we have good players. There's no question about that, and I'm not saying that, but they're almost the same type of player. We haven't got light and shade. We have. It's as though we've just gone out. You know, when you used to pick the Barbados side at rugby, and you just put together the best 15 players and let them sling the ball around, because it was just a fun game. It wasn't competitive, and that was good to watch. But you can't build sides like that. You've got to have where what. I mean, we don't want 2 players exactly the same in midfield, for example. You want one that is brilliant at going forward and picks a pass, and the other with the legs that'll cover and do it. We want a runner box to box like Terry McDermott was, and then you want somebody with the skills of Hibby or Tony Green, who's just going to, in one killer pass, stick your centre forward in and you're in business. We haven't got the light and shade. We've got good players who do the same things.
But I go back to what does Eddie Howe do about this Saturday, because we can talk about the windows to come and buying the players to make Newcastle into that possession-based side, but that doesn't help him for Saturday. Is it a case that on the training pitch, John, he's probably just set up one team to go against the other half of the team and say, right, you sit in a low block, and the other team's got to try and pick you apart?
Yeah, I mean, we're reaping now what was sowed. We're reaping now with what we've bought, and in some cases what we haven't bought. I mean, you can only do so much with a squad. You can only change things so much with a squad, um, because you haven't got what you need. We haven't got the the Peter Beardsley. We haven't got the outside right, etc., etc. So it is very difficult. And when you look at what he's got to do on Saturday, you've got great difficulty. And it's confused a little bit, although ironically it might produce the answer. It's confused a little bit because the engine room, which is so important, you've got injury doubts about Bruno and Willock. Now that might just play into his hands and make a selection easier, because you bring Tonali in and you say Bruno wasn't quite ready and we don't want to risk him. We'll stick him on the bench and give him a quarter of an hour, or the same applies to Willock. So Tonali gets in the team, and that solved the problem for this week. But what does he do when they're all fit? What is the three to start when they're all fit? Now, they're not going to all be fit at Palace. Oh, yes, even if they are, the excuse can be used. Sorry, we can't carry both Willock and Bruno because of that knocks. They're not quite up to it. Tonali goes in there, one of them sits on the bench, or two of them sits on the bench. So, I mean, I would be amazed if Tonali doesn't start at Palace. But I was amazed with what happened against West Ham. Who knows anymore? I mean, does Newcastle have a Jekyll and Hyde side? And we've explained why, whether they can counter or whether they're in possession and they've got to do something about it. But they're Jekyll and Hyde side. Now, I didn't know what we were going to get against West Ham. I'm certain you didn't know, because neither of us were expecting that. 50,000 fans didn't know. And did Eddie Howe suspect for 1 minute, 5 minutes before kickoff, that he was going to have a game like that? I don't mean the way West Ham played. I meant the way we played.
I think the midfield's obviously the key question. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was Longstaff, Bruno, and Joe Willock. For me, if everyone's fit, I would drop Joe Willock out, as I was saying on the Tuesday show with Aaron. I think when Newcastle United have to be patient and not passing the ball around and waiting for the right moment, I don't think Joe Willock is effective, because his game is carrying Newcastle United forward at speed, and that's when you're on the counter attack. If you have to be patient in the build up, then he's not the player you want in there, in my opinion. So I would bring in Tonali is the 6, move Bruno out to the left, and keep Sean Longstaff on the right side of Tonali, and see how that works. And then you can bring Joe Willock on, if of course he's fit, which we think Bruno and Joe Willock probably will be. You can bring him on to the pitch off the bench with an hour gone, and just inject that little bit of energy and pace into the side when it's a bit more stretched. But then, John, that leaves you the issue of Joe Linton. If Bruno is playing at the left of Tonali in the middle, how does that impact Joe Linton on the left flank? Because he works so well with Joe Willock. So there's loads of kind of elements here that Eddie Howe's got to think about. It's not just as simple as taking one player out and saying that's the change, because you take one player out and it affects him, and him. So it's a real dilemma. But that's the midfield I would choose if everyone was fit. I'd be picking Sean Longstaff, Tonali in the middle, with Bruno on the other side. What would you be doing?
I think that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty fair. I think Willock has struggled to make a constant impact since his injuries. I mean, forgive me, Tonali is a real conundrum. I mean, he's the standout guy in the Italian national side. He's not just kept his place after he's 10 months out, he's the standout guy. And yet at club level, he can't get a start. Now, what sort of anomaly is that? How does that work out? And it's because him and Bruno are very much alike. Same pluses, same minuses. Uh, so that's a conundrum. It'll be solved on Saturday because I'll be staggered, as I said before, if Tonali doesn't start, whether we've got the excuse or not, if injuries to the other two. The midfield three will not remain the same, and Tonali will start, and he'll have to start. Otherwise, why have you spent 52 million? And what are you saying to him? By the way, you're brilliant for Italy, but you're not good enough for Newcastle United. It is a very, very difficult situation. Um, what do you do up top? We're not scoring enough goals. You keep Isaac. I mean, what do you do outside left and outside right? And, do you go outside left Gordon and outside right Joe Linton? Do you move Gordon across and play Barnes from the start? I mean, if you picked on the way players played against West Ham, any of them could be dropped and couldn't knock on the door of the manager because they didn't do enough to stay in the side. I mean, it's as simple as that. Willock was unrecognisable, and who plays outside right? But I mean, it is an absolute nonsense. It is a nonsense. And yes, we're not talking about the back because you've got two England internationals who we know are going to start at full back. And you know that it's going to be Byrne alongside Shaw because any chance Kelly had quickly went down the pan on both the goals that West Ham scored.
Well, yeah, he had a bad night against West Ham. Definitely at fault for the first goal, but the second goal, he's getting a lot of stick for that. And yes, he probably should have done a little bit better going out to meet Wan-Bissaka. But I think there's a few Newcastle United players before Wan-Bissaka gets the ball in the box that are getting away a little bit with the criticism because Joe Linton just literally says, "There you go, mate. Just you walk on through." He should have been stopped a long time before he got in the box. But anyway, yes, Lloyd Kelly, very disappointing. But I do feel like a lot of Newcastle United fans had already written him off even before this opportunity came along. Now that's not a defense of what went on Monday night because he didn't do as I expected him to do, but then nobody did. I'm disappointed he's not taking his opportunity, but I would just say to those who think he's been a waste of money, big wages, just, keep the faith. Let's not get on his back. He's proved prior in a few performances that, he looks a good defender. Bournemouth fans were gutted to lose him. Some might say, well, that's their level. I would say, well, I'd certainly take Semenyo from them if you were offering, or their new striker. So I don't agree with that. But I think, John, players can have bad games, and we've just got to support the lad.
Oh, yes, of course you have. That doesn't mean you want to support him to the extent where he starts at Crystal Palace because you
Oh
don't.
no, not at all,
And,
not at all.
and by the way, they're all big boys. They're all big boys, these who have cost a fortune and get paid a fortune. So, it's a ruthless old world. The point is that we keep saying that what we're trying to do for Crystal Palace, Andrew, is put a sticking plaster over a wound because we can't produce the real answer because that was failed to produce in the transfer windows the last two or three transfer windows when we haven't recruited well. We've recruited good players, but we've produced the sameness, and we've criminally ignored certain positions like outside right and centre forward, etc., etc. I am totally baffled by our transfer policy, which was so good when Eddie and the Saudis moved into the club and has been so indifferent since. I'm not talking about buying a lack of quality. I'm talking about how we decided what we should bring in. Did we look at our midfield and say, will this balance? Have we got a sitter? Have we got a goer? Have we got a box to box runner? Have we got a creator with the pass that unlocks the defence? Have we looked at the wingers and said, we shouldn't get Harvey Barnes because he only wants to play outside left and Gordon only wants to play outside left. Let's not get Bonds and let's get somebody that can play outside right. And that isn't having a go at Bonds, that's having a go. If you've got a jigsaw puzzle, they all don't just fit in automatically. They go where they go, don't they? And we haven't created a good jigsaw.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we're sat here discussing who starts on the right, who starts on the left, you play Anthony Gordon in his less preferred position and play Joe Linton out on the left, who seems to be a little bit more effective at the moment. But we were talking about him last year and the season before being this Patrick Vieira-esque type in the middle of the park. It just reaffirms the fact that we haven't got someone who can play on the right, who can win you games. And I know literally 10 minutes ago I was saying, as in Brian and Burma with a long-term answer. But right now, it's just about getting Newcastle United to a position where Europe is every single season, where the cups and finals are something that we get used to. So go out and get Brian and Burma in January, and let's remove this question of should we play Anthony Gordon on the
But
right? Should we play Joe Linton on the
can I,
right?
can I, s-
No, because we've
can
got
I
Brian
say
and
this
Burma.
to, can I say this to you, Andrew? If you're a Burma and you're a good player and you score goals, and a lot of sides are looking at you, and we've been linked with him, and Liverpool's been linked with him. Hey, they're just a point off us. Does he think if he looks at the league table, does he think he's hugely improving his career prospects by going one position up the table to join us? Do you think he might wait and see if Liverpool or somebody comes on from to start going into one of their wide positions in the future? This is the problem we've got, Andrew. Now is, and by the way, I'm not meaning we're going to finish 10th, because if we beat Crystal Palace, we'll probably shoot a little way up the table. But then if we don't beat Liverpool, we'll go back to where we are now. Where we are now is what we're about, we're 10th. Now, that produces a problem. When we were fourth and just played in the Wembley Cup final, a lot of players would want to sign for Newcastle United. When you're 10th, how many players want to sign for if the quality we're talking about? They want to sign for Newcastle. Why, if it was today, Andrew, why should Burma come here?
Yeah, no,
One
I get it.
position
I
ahead
get
of
it.
them.
And a lot of people do have that kind of arrogance and expectation that Newcastle United can just swoop in and take these great players. I still think it'll be
Aye.
an attractive move, but if I was him, you might say, well, I'll wait until the summer. I'll have another good few months at Brentford, continue scoring goals, and then see what we do in the summer. But you mentioned there the league table, John. Really, really interesting because it's so tight. Newcastle are 10th, as you see, on 18 points. A win against who are we playing again? Against Crystal Palace. Sorry, just got confused with all the clubs on the page there. A win against Crystal Palace would take them on to 21 points. Results go their way. They could end up a few places up the table. But again, if results don't go their way, John, there's a few
Yeah,
teams sitting there on 15. West Ham, Bournemouth are on 15, and Manchester United on 16, Brentford on 17. So Newcastle could slide down the table. I mean, West Ham would have to win by 4 goals. But, this is the point. That's how tight it is. So it's really important that they bounce back. It's also probably another nod to why it's not time for an overreaction, because one win shoots you up the league. So let's concentrate on getting that and bouncing back.
yes, yeah. But I mean, didn't we talk about West Ham? We said if we beat West Ham, and then no, the answer is when we beat West Ham, we could be sixth or something of that. Well, but it didn't happen. And what is happening at the moment? And I come back to it. And by the way, we say this, both of us and everybody else will say it because we care with a passion about Newcastle United. We're not being overcritical. We're desperate for Newcastle to be successful. We'd do anything for them to be successful. But played 12, won 5, drawn 3, lost 4. That's a Euro side, isn't it? That's an up and down side. That's here's a good result, and then it's followed by a bad result. That they are mid-table figures, and they've got to be improved and improved quickly. And we how does a side that played so well at Nottingham Forest in the next game play so badly against West Ham? Now, before anybody asks, I know why. Because we're playing away and we can play a little bit on the counter against Forest, etc., etc. Although they're not possession based at home, and we couldn't do that against West Ham. But we have this inconsistency. Um, and I bring it back to the fact that we've got good players, but they're all individuals. They don't actually gel together. If I've got somebody alongside me, I don't want them to have the same strengths as me because I want their strengths to be my weaknesses so that we cover between us the whole situation. Their strengths are my weaknesses and Vicky Verky. I don't want my strengths to be their strengths because that means my weaknesses are their weaknesses.
You want someone who compliments you, which yeah,
Absolutely.
at the moment some of them definitely do clash, and it seems like Eddie Howe might be struggling just to find the balance and maybe finding the positions that not only keeps everyone happy but gets them working to the best of their ability. Like Harvey Barnes, for example, you could say put him on the right, but we know it's absolutely pointless. But I also think, as I've mentioned, there's just loads of players not taking advantage of their opportunities. Like Lloyd Kelly, like Harvey Barnes off the bench. But anyway, the question is, John, how is it going to go on Saturday
In terms of result, you mean?
in terms of a result?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think Eddie Howe knows. There's 3,000 Newcastle fans sell out if they way end down at Sellers Park. They will travel not knowing what they're going to see. There's 50,000 fans left up here that normally go to home game that are desperate, don't know what they're going to see. You and I don't know what we're going to see. Does Eddie Howe know? Does Bruno and Isaac and Gordon and Willock know what they're going to produce on Saturday? I don't know if they know what they're going to produce. So how the heck are we supposed to know what's going to happen to Newcastle United at Crystal Palace? I mean, on paper, and the game isn't played on paper, famously said, on paper, this is a great chance to win. They've won 1 out of 12 in the second bottom of the table. This is a great opportunity to win on paper. But which Newcastle's going to turn up, Jekyll or Hyde? And will the style suit us? If they sit in and they can do that at home and their possession stats tell you that they do that at home, are we going to be clever enough without getting an early lead or where they've got to come out of it? If they get an early lead, heaven forbid, because it can just sit in and be Hadrian's Wall and we will not know how to climb over it. Um, it is very, very difficult to predict. There's absolutely no prediction. All I'm saying is that I'm hoping there's a stinging reaction from Eddie Howe and Tyndall and all the coaching staff, and that gets through to the players, and there's a stinging reaction about pride, etc., and we'll come out of it in the positive side. I just can't contemplate us losing because I dare it. I can't contemplate us losing. So is it going to be a draw or is it going to be a win? Either's possible, but honest to God, I mean, who knows?
I'm going to
Who
go
knows?
for a draw because I think you can have that reaction, you can have that spirit, John. But I just think the way that I'm anticipating Crystal Palace playing, I don't think Newcastle United are going to be able to break them down. So I'm going to go for a 0-0 kind of 1-1, which is disappointing because again, like West Ham, you look at who Newcastle United are playing, you look at where Newcastle United want to be. They should be beating these sides, and don't take my word there's arrogance or disrespect to the opposition. But Newcastle United, top side, European ambitions. You, you respect Crystal Palace, but you should be going there and saying we're gonna run over you. You've won once this season. Do you know what I mean?
You
Like,
know what you said, Andrew, beforehand. Signing the Brentford outside right, and I'm saying if you're him, would you say you'll come to Newcastle? They're a much bigger club in Brentford, and they're 50,000. Brentford can't get 50,000, etc., etc. But if you're him, would you hang on and see if Liverpool or somebody comes in because Newcastle's not a big step up? If you're gay and you're playing for England and you're playing for Palace against Newcastle, would you sign? I'm not saying he is what we need in January because we'll probably need an outside right in other positions a lot more in his position. But if you're the England fullback and you're captain of, would you come to Newcastle who are 10th at the moment, or would you hope that you get a club that's high up the league, or would you wait till the summer and see if we've got high up the league? It is a dilemma. The transfer market is a dilemma because the reaction to us wanting players will all happen if we get up the table and not happen if we don't. We have got to make that step to make us attractive again. We'll always be attractive with the home crowds we've got in Newcastle United and 52,000. And there isn't, I've said it before, and it is not sucking up to people that listen to this. We are the best fans in the world because we have for donkey's years supported failure and was supported magnificently, full throat, full throttle, full on. We are Newcastle United, regardless of what results are. So that is a huge reason I want to come to Newcastle United. But other players need more than that, and they don't want to come to it. If you're the sort of quality we need, you don't want to come to a team 10th. And that is what will happen. These guys want Newcastle to be higher if they're going to come to Newcastle. In the meantime, it is up to Eddie and it's up to the players we've got. Every single man, Jack, at Newcastle have got to play for their own personal pride. Let's cut out all this playing for the badge and playing for the fans and playing, which are lovely, lovely things, and they're lovely things to say. Play for yourself. Play for your own pride. Eddie, pick the team, run it for your own pride, to do what's right by you. Be stung by what's happened. Same with the coaches, same with every individual player on the field. Look at yourself. Hold your head up high. Say, I'm better than this, and I'm going to make it happen. Every single person representing Newcastle United at 3 o'clock on Saturday has got to think like that. And I tell you what, I didn't like the body language of a lot of players against West Ham. And especially when the things went against us, when we went 1-0 down, and from 2-0 down, some of the body language was absolutely atrocious, Andrew.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with you there, and I think everyone would agree with you that this is probably this game and games to come. It's much more than just 3 points on the line. You are right. Get up the table, make yourself an attractive proposition come January or the summer, because you can offer big money, you can offer big wages, you can offer everything you said there, but the league position in European football, for example, will be a major part in trying to attract new arrivals who can take you to that next level. But we have to focus on Crystal Palace on Saturday. I'm going for a draw. John,
I,
you
I
are...
agree with you. I
Yeah,
agree with you. I mean, I can see us sneaking a win because they're so average. I just can't contemplate defeat. I'm sorry. I just can't contemplate that. I can't think about it. I dare not think about it. I've got no wish to think about it. I think it could be a draw. But you know what? Having lost to West Ham and with Liverpool to come next, a draw isn't a great result, Andrew.
no, it's not. And again, you go back to what you expect, given everything, form, league position, etc. You would want Newcastle United and expect Newcastle United to be winning this game. So hopefully they can bounce back from that disappointing performance against West Ham, pick up all 3 points against Crystal Palace, and head into December and the festive period in good spirits. Thank you as always to John for providing the match preview. Thank to you guys for watching and listening. Give the video a thumbs up, share it amongst your Newcastle United supporting friends and family. Hit that link in the podcast description for your NORD VPN subscription. You can help support the podcast by doing that and keep yourselves safe as well for a really good price. Thank you as always for your support. And for myself and John, we will see you guys next week.